Now, I, for one, can say that standing on top of a tall ledge scares me. Even a 10-foot ledge scares me. The fear of heights is something that I have struggled with my whole life. As for my guest, though, today, I can say the opposite for him. Will Gadd joins me today to talk about life in Canada with COVID, how it's affected his career. We also talk about teaching kids risk management. And we briefly touch on his ascension of the Niagara Falls. Before we start this episode, I just want to let you know that you can hear the audio version on your favorite podcast app. And make sure to head on over to Twitch, over to the Parent Quest channel where I stream weekly on there. Okay, let's dive right into this episode with special guest Will Gadd. You getting a break now in your adventures, your climbing?
Things are a little bit slowed down for a bit, just with this whole COVID thing, and it's really hard to plan anything right now. You know, probably for everybody out there, you can't plan travel really. You can't plan what you're going to do, so you got to kind of just roll with it and see what happens. That's what I'm doing.
And so I was, when I realized I had the chance to talk to you, I was thinking, what you do, you're an extreme climber, paraglider, you do a whole lot of different things, writer, filmmaker, just everything. You're a man of many talents. Your sport literally seems to be the best sport during this crazy time. Has it affected you in any way?
Well, I can still do some version of my job, but part of being a pro athlete is traveling and shooting and going to events, and that's all gone, right? Nobody's traveling. And I can't leave Canada right now because if I come back home, then I have to spend 2 weeks in quarantine. Yeah. And that's not really fair I'd lose my mind for starters. So let's just go with that. But it's fair. I would not want to be the person that brought COVID back into my community, but it's also not fair for my family and you know, I can't do that. So everything's different now. I can still go ice climbing. When this first all started, I didn't want to add a drain on the EMS systems, right? Like I didn't want to load my hospital up if I fell off ice climbing and I'm, you know, lying there in the ICU, and we didn't know how big it was going to get at that time. And we still don't. Yeah. So this summer around here, things were pretty laid back. You know, I definitely was doing some guiding and did a fair amount of filming and shooting all in my local area, which has been great. Yeah. So I can either look at it as a problem and that I can't go climbing and do some of the things I used to do before, or as an opportunity to stay local. And I'm trying to look at it as an opportunity.
Yeah. That's pretty awesome. So I guess it has affected you in a much more way than I had imagined it would have, as far as traveling outside of Canada.
I mean, I can't go anywhere. And ironically, I was trying to cut down on my jet travel anyhow, but you know, I'm trying to do some stuff with climate change and change my carbon footprint. So I've been super successful with that. Yeah. So again, there's, you know, I can't say, you know, I really miss traveling and getting to do the great things that I'm lucky enough to get to do. But on the other hand, I haven't flown on a jet since March and I don't have a ticket booked. And that's the first time in 30 years where I'm not traveling and everything booked. And, you know, I've got guiding work lined up this winter, which is great. I've been doing a lot of speaking and figured out how to make that work online. So that's been great. Yeah. And just less travel, but hey, I'm really lucky. There's a lot of people I'm sure out there I took a financial bath, but it was a bath I could handle and it's sustainable at this point. Whereas I'm sure for a lot of people, they're having it rougher. And so I just need to recognize that I'm pretty, you know, I'm really lucky. And I wish everybody who's battling with it, good luck, you know, it's hard. Yeah.
These times are definitely rough.
Have you taken a hit from it, or are things rolling along pretty much normal for you?
So I work at the hospital. So things it's pretty chaotic. Right now we are at full capacity, and thankfully I have not personally been affected by it, and my family hasn't either. But we have friends and family members that have gotten it, and it seems to be a whole nother beast not to be messed with compared to the flu. So,
but even the younger people and stuff have had a pretty rough ride.
Yeah. We've got a pretty close a family member that got it recently, and they said it's like the flu but worse.
Yeah.
Yeah, and
Mm.
I mean, definitely wouldn't want to be in their shoes right
Well,
now.
I assume your family member is okay now, or
Yes, yeah,
okay,
yeah.
that's awesome.
They're out of the yeah,
Great, man.
yeah.
Well, I mean, I went through the guiding community here really quickly because a lot of it was ski based, and so it got into the hut system. A lot of international guests, and it got into the hut system, the heli skiing system here, and it ran in that community, and a lot of those people are, of course, my friends. So I in March I was seeing people who were young, mid 30s or mid 40s at the oldest, and getting hit with COVID, and
Mhm.
it really kicked their asses.
Yeah.
It was rough, and then they got better and had after effects, and I have one friend in particular who is, it's been 9 months or whatever, and he's pretty much back to normal, but he was late 30s, super fit guy, and no pre-existing conditions, and he got hammered, and that really made me think that like you said, it's not something to be messed with.
Yeah. Yeah, it's weird because there's people that can get it and have very mild symptoms, and then people the same age, a young age, can get it and just get taken out by it completely.
Yeah, I think overall there's just, it seems like treatments, and thanks to people like you, we have better outcomes, but I'm not enthusiastic. I'm not. Yeah, my daughter just had to have a test, and it has a big impact. We
Oh
got the
yeah,
results back. She's negative,
it's good to
but
hear.
she had to, with this test, now her climbing programs are in jeopardy, and if she tests positive, then her cohort gets pulled out of school,
Huh.
and the kids she was in the climbing program with, that gets shut down for them, and so it's I feel like we were in precarious times again, and I don't know, I think we have to, I don't know, I hope everybody, I don't want to get locked out again, so I hope everybody, we take the precautions we can,
Yeah,
both for what we know the problems are, and for the problems that we don't know. What in risk management we call unknown unknowns,
yeah.
and I think there's a lot of them. So I hope everybody just,
Stay
let's keep
safe.
it going here. Let's
Yeah,
chill out.
yeah, yeah. Let's hope the long-term effects is it doesn't turn the entire human society into like zombies or something crazy.
Well, that would be bad. Yeah,
Yeah.
I'm hopeful that doesn't. The other coronaviruses don't seem to do that, so
No,
hopefully this
no.
one doesn't. But we don't know, like the heart, and I have I have 80 hours of first aid and an anatomy course. I'm not a medical person, but I read the studies, and I can read. There are a lot of outcomes that are not very good, and we don't
Mhm.
know the effects of that long term. So, as a person who manages risk, I'm like, when I really don't understand something, then I tend to take a step back, and I feel like with COVID, I despite all my reading and engagement, it's very hard to really know with it. So I'm just hopeful that we do a good job keeping it to a dull roar until we have a vaccine,
Yeah,
or maybe the vaccine won't work. We don't even
yeah.
know that really. So see how it works.
Yeah, I tell since this all has kind of started, we've been pumping in vitamin C and vitamin D and just trying to get like just our immune systems just
Yeah,
in top shape, just to anything to help ward it off. Really.
yeah, and all the things that we as parents have to battle with, like sleep,
Yeah.
and especially if you're a young parent and finding time to do the things that keep you healthy, and
Yeah.
not easy, is it? So
No,
right on.
definitely not. And so 2 weeks ago, my oldest daughter got sick with fever, cough,
Uh,
mild fever, and it spread it on to myself, and then my youngest daughter got it as well. And I went and got tested. They're not in daycare, they're not in preschool or anything. So if I tested positive, then they probably had it as well. Thankfully, results came back negative. But during that whole time, while I had it, there's that added stress of like, is it this lingering in the back of my head the whole time?
oh yeah.
No, it's something that we have to live with. But
Well, it's,
anyway,
it's an interesting discussion, and we're all thinking about it, aren't we?
yeah,
And try to figure out our path forward. And I like I didn't go climbing or anything that I thought was relatively high risk for the first couple months of the COVID thing, because I just didn't want to add to the load in the hospital, and then it opened up, and I'm starting to think, as the ICU levels around here get ramped up, and we're maybe going back to a little bit of where we were in the spring, and
hmm
I think it's probably, for now, in my local system here, things are still working, but I'm to keep an eye on that. I don't want to be, I don't need to go ice climbing. The world does not need an ice climber today, but it may need an ICU bed. So I don't want to be that guy. So for now, I'm willing to take that risk, but we'll see where it goes.
That's really commendable of you to
Well,
kind of.
I also want, it could be my dad in there, right? It's like, it's
Yeah.
commendable, but it's all, I don't really, I actually don't think it's all that commendable. It's just common sense. Like, we kind of need these systems to function. And it's also like the load on them if you can't get your chemotherapy or you can't get your booking to get your, hernia fixed or whatever, like that's already going on here. And so, I don't know. I just wish everybody the best. And I hope we figure out a way forward through this that doesn't get too bad for people.
Yeah. So going back to your kids, is the majority of people in your area homeschooling?
No, most people are in school here,
Okay.
and we made the decision to have our kids in school.
Okay.
Just because it looks, from everything I can read, that certainly up to 14 or 15 or so, you've got less ACE receptors or whatever, and the outcomes seem to be pretty good there. Again, there's unknowns, but you have to balance that against the lack of education and the social interaction and their friends and everything else. And then, if I had some pre-existing conditions that I thought were a real problem, then I would think about it differently, or their mom did or whatever. And then, we would think about it differently, but I still don't know if we made the right decision. I guess we'll know, but we decided to go with that. And most people here have. It's a relatively healthy community here in general. So, and I didn't think it was going to last this long, to be honest. I had a homeschooling program set up and ready to kick to that as soon as it went down. But we've gotten a few months out of it, which has been good for the kids.
Yeah.
Most people there are homeschooling now, or
it's back and forth. We've got people that are 100% homeschooling, and then people are sending their kids back to school, and then they're also doing like half and half. So they'll send their kids to school like 3 days a week and do homeschool 2 days a week. And thankfully, I'm not in that situation or the position to make that decision right now, because I think that is a very difficult decision as a parent to make, because either their education is in your hands, or you send them back to school where the higher risk of them possibly getting sick exists there.
Yeah, and I think we're very lucky to have the option to choose.
Yeah.
It's a lot harder when you're a working parent that, both parents are working full time and you can't switch your schedules around or whatever. I feel pretty lucky to have the option, and I think most of all, my daughter feels lucky that I'm not teaching her math anymore. So, a man's got to know his limitations, to quote Clint Eastwood. And, maybe mine.
Yeah, I would be in that same boat. Me teaching my kids math would not be a good thing. It'd be stressful, to be honest. I'd probably be tearing my hair out.
Yeah. So, but here we are, and going forward, and the good part of it is that I think here, anyhow, the programs have been able to run, which is great for the kids. My daughter's enjoyed climbing, and the other one's enjoyed her gymnastics, and we're wavering right on the edge right now. I don't expect that to last a whole lot longer, but maybe it will. And it's been great to have it. And I guess for me, I've looked at every day where I can have that as kind of a bonus day for them, and for us to work and so on as well. And so, I've been doing a lot of writing and a lot of projects, trying to get those done instead of traveling. But oddly enough, I used to do all my writing on jet, so I don't have my little spot on my jet to write. I don't know what to do. It's taken some adapting, but this is a first world problem. So I've been overall blessed,
Yeah, it really is. Aside from writing, being home much more than you are normally, is there anything else that you've kind of picked up? Any other hobbies or sports or activities or anything?
Well, I think I've been able to eat a lot better, which I like. I've had more time to cook and things. I'm about finished the rewrite on my ice climbing book, which is important to me and has been slacking for like 3 years. So the mountaineers are watching this. Your book is on the way. It's happening. So I've been able to finish off projects like that. And also it's been a good reality check. Do I really want to travel all the time? And like, is that what I should be doing with my life? And no, it's not. So that's been a good check. It's allowed me to get my carbon footprint down. I've been able to spend more time than I sometimes am able to with my kids, and we've done some good backpacking trips and had some good adventures, and so it's. I mean, as long as our society is kind of functioning, I feel lucky. It's.
Yeah.
I think here in Canada we've had a pretty lucky, really. So I did a lot more rock climbing this summer. Got strong. I climbed a lot with my kids. That was great, and rode a lot and developed some new ideas. So when this thing does end, and I don't want to go back to traveling like I did, but I would like to travel a little bit more and still meet the goals I have for carbon reduction. I don't know. It's been a weird pause, but I can't say overall it's been bad. It's been different, but useful, I think.
Yeah. Yeah. So what is your upbringing with rock climbing? I watched your TEDx on YouTube recently, and I saw the picture of your dad hoisting you up. That was hilarious. I laughed out loud at that.
Right on.
Did your parents do it professionally? Did they?
No, I mean, back then there wasn't really such a thing as a professional climber anyhow. So my dad wasn't a guide. He was a geologist to start with. And then he moved into basically educating and writing about mountain environmental stuff of one kind or another. He wrote the top book on the Canadian Rockies. So as a guide to the flora and fauna and everything else in the geology, everything in the Canadian Rockies. And that, but growing up, it was something that he just did for recreation. And then he would drag me along on those trips. So I spent a lot of time in the mountains as a very young kid, either doing stuff with my dad or waiting for my dad to come back from one adventure or another. I'd sort of get parked up some random place in the mountains, and looking back on it, I'm not entirely sure that was a great idea. I don't know if I do that with my kids, but the good thing it did teach me is how to be comfortable in the mountains, how to be effective at keeping myself warm, and all these base skills that actually make all these mountain sport activities a lot more pleasurable and give people a lot more confidence when they have them. So I was lucky to do that. But my mom was a climber too, and so while she was pregnant with me, she only stopped climbing when she could no longer see her feet, she says.
Wow.
She's like, she went into the doctor's office, and she's like, she'd actually burned her butt quite badly, because back then you wrapped the rope around your body and slid down it. You didn't have these like tricky belay devices,
right?
Gear. So she burned the hell out of her butt and went in for her regular appointment. The doctor's like, "What did you do to yourself?" So that was when she stopped climbing with me. And then she climbed some after I was born as well, but like a lot of people, your risk tolerances change as a parent.
Man, she's like super mom.
Yeah, well, she did all kinds of stuff, She took me to the bugaboos with her when I was 3, and got benighted, and kind of punched a bear. All these crazy stories from my growing. But all that did instill a real joy of adventure in me, for sure. Like that's where I got it. I was like, this is great. And when I was in my teens, I was more interested in BMX bikes and team sports for sure, but I never really escaped. The apple didn't fall very far from the tree, so to speak. At least the rock didn't fall very far from the cliff and climbing parlance. Yeah.
So was there ever a point where they were kind of scared that you decided to do this for a living, as a profession, or were they fully supportive from the get-go with it?
Well, my parents, I think, recognized that I was not normal at an early age. I'm not normal. The way I go at life is not normal, and it took me a while to understand that too. I just didn't understand why the world operated at a different frequency than my mind did. I just, now I'm more or less comfortable with it. I know I'm not normal, and I'm okay with that. But with them, I think they knew that I needed high speed, high intensity things coming in. And if I didn't get positive versions of that, then like a lot of adolescents, I would get negative versions. And, I was very familiar to the RCMP in my small town of Jasper, just because I needed interesting things to happen, or I would make them happen.
Mhm.
And so you could say that I chose this professional athlete life. And I did have other careers. I was going to be a lawyer. I used to run a publishing company. I had a qualitative market research company. I can do other things. But that moment of creating companies or creating businesses or creating new climbing projects or whatever, and then figuring out how to do them, that's what I really, really thrive on and like. So I don't know if there's like, maybe I'm unemployable in any other way by this point, other than a pro athlete, adventure guy, writer, whatever I guide, whatever I am these days. It's like, did I choose this career and I just find one that was tolerable enough for my brain? I'm not entirely sure, but I like it. It's worked
Yeah.
out well.
Yeah, that's excellent. I mean, not a lot of people can say they enjoy what they do for a living.
Well, I got to grind too, like everybody does.
Mhm.
It's not my favorite thing to, as you know, unfortunately, I'm bad at answering emails, but I got to sit there and grind through the like 500 emails in my inbox and knock
Yeah.
them down to some kind of tolerable level. And, when I write, I never sit down and think, gee, I get to write now. It's like pulling teeth. And
Mhm.
then once I get going, it's, I enjoy it a lot, actually.
Yeah.
I think a lot of people look at it and go, oh, you just get to do what you do and it's awesome. And it's like, I work way harder at not working than I ever worked when I had a normal job.
I think I think the
It
people
never ends.
what the people
So
see is you on social media climbing and all that stuff, whereas there's probably a lot more behind the scenes that we don't actually see you do.
that's a good point. I should probably be more honest about that and put up pictures of my like desk or
Typing.
something, or
Yeah. That's funny, man. So as a parent, you obviously take your kids with you on adventures and hikes and climbing trips. Um, how did you go about teaching them the ways of Will Gadd? I mean, uh, is there like a memory or your first trip that you took them on, or a specific lesson that you taught them? Uh, I, I don't I don't know if, I mean, obviously I don't do it as a living. It's not my profession by any means, but I'm interested to know on how you teach your kids uh, risk management skills and survival skills.
yeah, I mean, there's a couple really direct tools on that, but just as a philosophical point, because I've spent so much of my life teaching other people sports, your job as an educator often is to adapt your style so the person learns what they need to learn.
Hmm.
I think that was pretty useful for parenting because as a parent, I had this misguided delusion that I was going to be the one who set it all down. This is the way it's going to be. And I rapidly figured out that taking more of an educator approach to it and being like, oh, okay, what is the
Hmm.
younger one is a lot like me. She needs high stimulus stuff every day or she loses her mind. The older one needs more downtime and reflection. She's an artist and that's just how she works. So I think going trying to understand how they work and then give them things that work well and the structure, there's rules, but
Hmm.
that was useful for me to look at it more as an education project than I'm the parent and that's how it is project. I got some bad intelligence on that, so I had to adapt to that pretty quickly, and I'm still learning. I always thought I would know what I was doing at some point in my life when it came to both my job and being a parent, and nope, still making it up pretty much every day. But and then taking kids out, like kids like going outside,
Hmm.
they really dig it. So um, for me, taking my kids out from a very early age was just what we did. We would go outside and do stuff, and they loved it. And occasionally it would go bad, but overall they loved it. So if I were listening to them, which is what you should be
Yeah.
doing, then it generally went well. And if I were trying to force my version of events on them, then it generally went poorly. So one of the big things for taking kids outdoors is to get rid of your goals or change them. Like my goal, especially when the kids were younger, was we're going to go for a hike. We're not going to get to anywhere. And if you give that up, then you can just enjoy whatever happens. Sometimes we'd make it 50 feet and they'd play with the log or whatever. Or one of their buddies would come and they would take turns jumping off the log, and that's fine. We're winning just by being outside together. That's we've met the goal. And then as they gotten older, they become a little more goal oriented for sure. And we try to do certain things, but always remembering that the goal is to be outside rather than to like complete something. And that helped me deal with it. And I
Yeah.
think they liked it better too.
Yeah. Oh, totally. Uh, Is it horrifying or not horrifying? That's a bad way to word it, but uh, watching them progress in learning how to climb, how to hike. Uh, is there part of you like is there a parent part of you that's like be careful or somewhat I don't know scared to see them
Yeah.
do such extreme stuff?
Well, yeah, for sure. Every parent, if their offspring is, in a hazardous environment, is worried about it. But
Mm,
right now, I can still control their environments pretty heavily. And where I would take a guest as a guide might be very different than, we're not going to go do Niagara Falls in the backdrop here. Right? That's not an appropriate place to take really anybody. And so I wouldn't take my kids into high risk situations. But what I'm trying to do is teach them the tools so that when I'm not with them, they can make decisions about high risk situations. And that's, I think so far they're showing good signs that it's working. And again, they've often educated me. The system we came up for hazard recognition and mitigation started with my older daughter Marie when she was quite young, like I don't know, maybe 5, and she was trying to cross this log over a little creek, and the water's running underneath the log. And I asked her, Marie, what happens if you fall off that log? Because I don't think she'd really thought about it. She's just having fun playing on the log. And it's not a ripping river, right? This is not a lethal situation, but I'm going to be in that creek pretty fast if she falls in on the upstream side of the log and gets pushed underneath, because the water's going to do that. And there's branches hanging down. So she's going to get stuck under this thing pretty quick. And I asked her, what's going to happen? And she thought about it, and she's like, well, if I fell on the downstream side, I don't think it'd be any big deal. I just stand up. The water's only, not very deep. But on the upstream side, yeah, I could get like stuck in. And it was a conversation. And out of that came this idea of, I would ask her, what hazard level are you at? And she developed these 3 hazard levels. And the first one is bumps and bruises, right? That's your average playground situation. That's like hiking along a trail or whatever. And if I'd said, what hazard level are we at, Marie? And she'd be like, oh, Dad, bumps and bruises. I got this. And then we'd be, maybe in the mountains hiking along a trail that was more serious with a drop off to the side. And usually she would recognize the hazard, because that's the first thing, whether you're doing it professionally for an oil company or as a little kid, is to recognize the hazards. And she would say, okay, Dad, now this is a little more serious, and if I fell off this, there's like, it's 10 feet down to rocks or 5 feet. And, this is pretty serious. Like it could go bad. And be like, okay, what's our level? And she'd be, oh, that's hospital for sure, Dad. And what are we going to do about it? And, and now as they've gotten older, both of them be like, okay, we're going to hike. We're not going to run here. We're going to move a little bit slower. We're going to stay on the side of the trail away from the drop. And, maybe the younger one is going to hold my hand and I'm going to walk on the outside of the trail, right? Like that's our hospital level, but they have to recognize it and then propose a solution to it. And then we'll be in some are you in Toronto? Where are you?
Where am I located?
Yeah.
I am in Huntington, West Virginia.
See, Huntington, West Virginia. All right. So like you're not too far from DC or someplace like that.
6 hours. Yeah.
Yeah. So you're in some big city, right? Some heinous place like DC, New York, Denver, one of these places. It's like full on mayhem. And we'll be there. And, I take them with me on my trips. So we'll be hiking around and I'm like, so, what happens if you let go of my hands and run into traffic? And they'll look up at me and be like, death, Dad, death. and I'm not trying to freak them out. Like they get the concept that there are high consequences. And so I'll ask them, what are we going to do? And they're like, we're going to hang onto your hand. We're not going to like go out in the street unless the sign's lit up. We're starting to figure out these walk signs, and we're going to make sure that we have other people that are going with us. And they're thinking about it.
Yeah.
And I'm not trying to scare them with the death thing. But,
No.
what I want them to do is to be free to move among all the hazards that are out there. Like there's not that many actually. There's this huge area of freedom if you can recognize and mitigate risk that they can operate in. So like my kids hit the playground, they're gonna own it. They're like, Dad, bumps and bruises. No, they have. And then getting back to your original question, now my daughter's 13. She's starting to go out with her friends and get into situations that I don't have a direct handle on anymore. And so she has to make those decisions.
Yeah.
And I want her to go back to that hazard level and to understand the consequences. And I hope that over time we develop some kind of programming where it's like she automatically assesses risk. And so she doesn't get into a car with somebody who's been drinking.
Mm-hmm.
She sees that as a real hazard. And then that frees her up, she can like live the rest of her life with relative freedom. But that's the goal, is to like produce offspring that have like skills to manage life. And so that's how I've approached it. And I hope it's useful to them. And I got to tell you one quick story, but I heard them arguing the other day. That was a few years ago, actually, but they were up in the treehouse, and my treehouse is pretty legit. It's like 10 feet off the ground. And they were arguing whether it would be bumps or bruises, like a group of little Freds. They're all up there arguing. And they're arguing, like, would it be bumps and bruises, hospital, or death if they fell out of the treehouse? And I don't think the answer really was all that important. What was important was the conversation.
Mm-hmm.
I was like, my job here is done.
Yeah. They took what you said, and they're using it.
Yeah, I was like, if that's all I needed to hear. It's like, they're arguing quite hard about it. Like, no, if you land on your head, that could be death. If you landed on that rock, it wasn't my kids. There were other kids up there too. And they're like, no, bumps and bruises. You'd land on your feet and roll, it'd be fine. And you're like, well, if we just stay away from the edge, and it was this. And I was just like, this is great.
Yeah.
And I use the same system with my guests in the mountains. It's like, what kind of terrain are we in, and what are the outcomes, and are we comfortable with them? And the same thing's used by, like, I talked about this at an oil company a while back, and they now have that in their handbook for like risk analysis and mitigation. And I love that there's these big burly oil guys out there like bumps and bruises, hospital. I love that.
I'm gonna start using that. That's genius. I mean, it's a good way to teach them at a young age, how to avoid certain dangers.
Yeah, and it was a thing we developed together. That wasn't my system. It was something we kind of developed, and it started with that situation of going across the log and just trying to talk about it and get used to recognizing it. Because like if I tell them be careful, that's pretty meaningless. There's no specific actionable information in there, right?
Yeah.
But if I'm like, okay, in this situation, here's the hazard and here's what we're going to do. And it's even better if they've come up with that information themselves. Like, okay, Dad, like, what do we do? So we're in an airport together, and my kids and I have been traveling through airports since they were very young. And we talked about, like, what are we going to do if you get split off from me? What's the plan going to be? And it's not a super high hazard situation in an airport, but that planning and contingency and thinking, so that they're like, okay, I'm going to go up to one of those people at the counter, and I'm going to tell them that I've lost you and we need to find you. And like, okay, reasonable plan. And I don't worry about them in the airport. I know they're not just going to run around randomly without a plan. They're going to
like Macaulay Culkin. Lost some.
Yeah. It's not going to be. And they're not afraid. They're not like, oh man, somebody's going to abduct me. Although we have talked about that.
Yeah.
And it's like, this is super rare. But what are the odds of this happening? And we talk about it. And how do and I hope they never have to use that information, but it gives them a lot more freedom and understanding and confidence to think things through and make their own decisions. That's what I'm really hoping as a parent happens.
Yeah.
We'll see. So far it's working, but it's, they're a lot like me, and they're going to go for it.
Yeah, I'd say they are. So when is the book From Bumps and Bruises to Death coming out?
I don't know if you'll buy it. Maybe I'll write it, but yeah. I'm not.
I will buy it.
Well, thanks, man.
Yeah.
I'll send you a copy but it's, I want them to think that way and to develop their own risk management kind of software, if you want to call it that. We're all running it, right? Like, we're all making decisions about what we're going to do. And I think rather than telling them how it is, I just hope that they start developing those processes. And like I said, if they're fighting in the treehouse, I was like, yeah.
Yeah. That is awesome. It's a good story. It's like you gotta like pat yourself on the back for that one, or
Yeah, for like 30 seconds, I felt like a great dad. And then I was like, wait a minute, I'm blowing all these other areas. There was a momentary flush if I got that part right that day. So that was good.
yeah, it is. Well, I don't want to keep you much longer here. I appreciate you coming on. It's been a real treat, and hopefully, maybe I get you back on in the future at some point in life. Maybe when a book comes out or you get a new film out or something.
Well, I'd love to do that again. Where in West Virginia? I know West Virginia a little bit, but
uh, Charleston.
yeah.
So about 30 minutes north of Charleston.
Okay. I know roughly. I mean, I don't know if you ever have been to Seneca Rocks in West Virginia.
Yeah, we drive through there.
Yeah. So that's what, 2-3 hours from you?
Yeah.
Maybe? Yeah. So I spent some time there in high school. I went to school in New Hampshire for a couple of years, and then somehow wound up climbing at Seneca Rocks. And had some great adventures there. Just the whole, I don't know whether you technically consider yourself southeast in West Virginia or not, but I had just an amazing trip through that part of the world. And I'd love to still have family in Virginia and near Charlottesville, Virginia. So
yeah,
love that part of the world. And
yeah, it's funny. People, I don't know, think of West Virginia as just a boring state and full of depressed, obese people. But
no,
it's a gorgeous state, and if anyone ever gets a chance to drive through it or just even hang out, even where I live here, everybody's so laid back and easygoing, and it's a pretty place to live on the earth.
It is a great place to live on the earth, and great kayaking too, great rivers and climbing. And I don't want to we're getting way sidetracked right here.
It's all right.
I mean, growing up in Canada, I had this perception of the southeastern U.S.
Mm-hmm.
and it I think it gets not treated very well.
Right.
Sometimes and then I ended up, just by sheer chance, spending a bunch of time in West Virginia at Seneca Rocks, met all these great people, had these great experiences. I had people take me into their homes, and then I spent a bunch of time paddling all over from sort of Tennessee and a bunch of those rivers and the
You've been in New River?
Ohio. What's that?
You've been on the New River?
Yeah, the Cheat, the Gauley, the Yauk, all these great rivers out there. And I don't know, it just and then I've been lucky enough to go back for business a bunch as well. And I'm a fan of the southeastern.
Yeah, it's nice. I didn't realize, but people are starting to do river surfing here.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, that's pretty awesome.
There's just so much to do, and there's space to do it in a way that often is hard to find. You want to live in a mountain town in the Western U.S., it's very hard to have a job and a house, whereas you can still find places to live where you are, and all up and down that kind of corridor. That I don't know. Anyhow, I'm a fan, so let's stay in touch and trade houses. That'd be great.
Yeah. Where can people find you? Where can they find your stuff? And
well, if anybody's interested, it's Instagram's Real Will Gadd, and just search for Will Gadd. It comes up pretty quick. Or there's willgadd.com. And if people want to hit me with an email or whatever, ask questions, I do respond to that. It sometimes takes me a while, as you unfortunately know, and my apologies for that. Right. But I will get back to you, and and we're all trying to figure out this crazy ride, and if I can help other people with that, or just a question or whatever, I'm totally happy, more than happy to do that. So yeah, please hit me up.
Nice. One last question. I'll just go ahead and ask it. What was the feeling like climbing to the top of the Niagara Falls right when you took your last step up to there?
That was pretty great. There was so much energy and time and work that went into that. The safety plan was measured in feet, it was massive. And I had to fly to Buffalo 8 different times to meet with every level of state government in New York. And, I put basically 2 years of my life into that project with some other great people too. I had a lot of help on that from Red Bull and other people, and learned so much about how things work and why. And finally to get to climb it, to go from no, that's way too risky, to, wow, we might get some great benefits and yes, you're crazy, but you're not crazy in a loose way, you know? And if we did this, we'd have positive outcomes that might help us sell hotel rooms in Niagara Falls, and all that work, all that understanding what people wanted and how to make it work. And to finally stay on top of it, yeah, that was good.
Yeah.
But the best part was the permit said only Will Gadd ever, right? Like nobody else shall ever climb Niagara Falls. I developed a relationship with the head of the New York State Police Department detachment there. And he's a pretty hard guy. When I turned to him and I was like, hey, sir, maybe Sarah could climb this as well. She's been down there for a long time. And he's like, oh, yeah, go ahead. So she got to climb it too. So
That's pretty awesome.
It was awesome, man. It was
cool,
really
man. All right. Well, I'll let you go. Again, thank you very much. Appreciate it. And I hope you have a good evening. And maybe we'll get in contact in the future.
I look forward to it, and best of luck. I hope you and your family and your community stays healthy. And it's we're all in this together. So hopefully we'll get through it in a good way. And best of luck to everybody.
Cool, man.
Thank you for having me on.
Hey, anytime. Will, thank you so much for joining me this week on Parent Quest. It was such a pleasure talking to you, picking at your brain about the current events over in Canada, dealing with COVID. I hope that you and your community stay safe, stays healthy. And it was also just awesome talking to you about how you taught your kids risk management, from bumps to bruises to hospitals to death. It truly was a great chat, and I really appreciate it. Hope to hear back from you soon. You listeners and viewers, if you want to hear more Parent Quest, be sure to subscribe to Parent Quest on YouTube. And you can also head on over to twitch.tv/ParentQuest, where I stream regularly on there. If you want updates, be sure to head on over to Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, search Parent Quest, follow, and you will get the latest episode updates. You'll get more information as to when I'll be streaming and new YouTube videos as well. Again, thank you all so much for watching. I couldn't do this without you. And I think with that said, this quest has officially been completed.